The message arrived when Daniel Mercer was half asleep, the room dark except for the streetlight bleeding through the curtains. His phone vibrated once on the nightstand. He almost ignored it. Nothing good ever came after midnight. When he finally picked it up, the glow burned his tired eyes, and the words on the screen hit harder than any noise ever could. It was from Evan Cole, 3 short lines, cold, clean, final. Evan wrote that the board had voted, that the decision was already made, that Daniel should understand it was for the good of the company. No greeting, no apology. No thanks for 10 years of work. Just an ending wrapped in calm logic. Daniel sat up slowly, his heartbeat loud in his ears. For a moment, he thought he had misunderstood. He read it again. Then again, the meaning did not change. He was out, locked out, of the company he had built from nothing. The company that had once lived only as notes in his old notebook and hope in his chest. The silence in the apartment felt heavy. The hum of the city outside continued like nothing had changed. Cars passed. Someone laughed in the distance. The world kept moving while Daniel stopped. He swung his legs off the bed and stood barefoot. On the cold floor, his reflection stared back at him from the dark window. He barely recognized himself. His eyes looked older, sharper, like something inside had been cut loose. 10 years. 10 years of trust. Daniel remembered the early days clearly. 2 friends, 1 idea, and long nights fueled by cheap coffee and belief. Evan had been there from the start, sitting across the table, talking big dreams, promising loyalty. They had shaken hands on everything. No lawyers, no contracts, just trust. That trust now felt foolish. As Daniel paced the room, memories rushed in fast and unwanted. Late meetings where Evan insisted on handling negotiations. Evan offering to take pressure off Daniel by managing the board. Evan smiling, always smiling, even when things were tense. Daniel realized the truth too late. Evan had been building walls while Daniel was still opening doors. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Evan, longer this time. Evan explained himself. He said Daniel had become a risk. Too emotional, too careful. The company needed speed, not doubt. Evan claimed he had tried to protect Daniel's reputation. He said this was the cleanest way. Daniel laughed once, sharp and empty. Protect him by removing him without warning, by cutting him out of his own creation. The laughter faded quickly, replaced by a tight pressure in his chest. This was not just business. This was personal. He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Anger rose. But it wasn't wild. It was focused, quiet, the kind that waits. Daniel replayed the last board meeting in his head. Evan had praised him openly, talking about teamwork and shared vision. Daniel had nodded, proud, unaware that the decision had already been made behind closed doors. Evan had stood there, calm and convincing, while Daniel unknowingly said goodbye to everything he built. The betrayal was not sudden. That realization hurt the most. It had been planned, carefully shaped. Every compliment, every reassurance, every "we're in this together" had been part of the setup. Daniel felt something break inside him. Not loudly, not all at once. Just a slow cracking, like ice under weight. He stood again and walked to the kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. He poured a glass of water but didn't drink it. His hands were steady, which surprised him. He thought he would shake. Instead, he felt clear. Too clear. Evan believed he was right. Daniel could see that now. In Evan's mind, this was not betrayal. It was strategy. Evan had chosen success over friendship and justified it with numbers and future plans. That made it worse. There was no regret to fight against, only certainty. Daniel leaned against the counter and closed his eyes. He thought of the people who still worked at the company. The interns he had mentored, the staff who trusted him. They would hear a clean story tomorrow. It's a polished version where Daniel stepped aside for progress. Evan would make sure of that. The thought burned. By morning, emails would go out. Access would be cut. His name removed from documents. His voice erased from meetings. 10 years reduced to a paragraph in company history. Daniel opened his eyes, staring at the wall, and felt anger settle deep in his bones. Not rage that explodes, rage that plans. He returned to the living room and picked up his laptop. He didn't open it. He just placed it on the table, resting. His hand on the lid like it was something fragile. He knew things Evan assumed were forgotten. Conversations, agreements, weak points. Daniel had always been the careful one. It's the one who remembered details. Evan thought he had one because he believed Daniel was passive. That belief almost made Daniel smile. The night stretched on. Sleep did not come. Daniel sat in the dim light, watching shadows move across the walls as cars passed outside. Each minute sharpened his thoughts. Each second fed the question forming in his mind. What do you do when the person you trusted most becomes the reason you lose everything? By sunrise, Daniel knew one thing for certain. He could not pretend this hadn't happened. He could not simply move on, not yet. Something had been taken from him, and the wound was too fresh, too deep. The desire for payback did not arrive as a scream. It arrived as a whisper, calm and reasonable. It told him that fairness mattered. That silence would mean acceptance. That letting Evan walk away untouched would be a lie he would carry forever. As light filled the room, Daniel stood by the window again, watching the city wake up. People headed to work, unaware that his world had collapsed hours earlier. He wondered how many betrayals hid behind ordinary mornings. His phone remained silent now. Evan had said his piece. In his mind, the matter was settled. Daniel finally understood something that changed everything. This was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. Morning came without relief. Daniel left the apartment before the sun fully rose, moving through empty streets with a mind that would not slow down. His body felt awake, sharp, driven by something stronger than sleep. The betrayal had settled into him, not as shock anymore, but as purpose. Every step he took felt guided by the same thought. Evan had chosen this. Over the next few days, the truth unfolded piece by piece. Daniel learned that Evan had been meeting with board members for months. Quiet lunches, private calls, gento. Warnings about Daniel's instability. Evan never attacked directly. He suggested concern. He framed himself as the protector of the company's future. It was clean, smart, and deeply cruel. Daniel watched from a distance as the company announced changes. Evan stepped into the spotlight with confidence, speaking about growth and bold moves. Daniel's name was mentioned once, briefly, as a founder who had decided to step away. The lie was smooth enough to be believed. Anger flared, but Daniel forced it down. He understood now that emotion was what Evan had used against him. If revenge was coming, it had to be quiet. Daniel met with old contacts under simple excuses: coffee, catching up. He listened more than he spoke. People talked easily when they thought nothing was wrong. They shared worries about rushed deals and pressure from Evan to move fast. Daniel filed every detail away. He did not promise anything. He did not reveal his plans. He learned. Kay alone again. The weight returned. Planning revenge was not as clean as it felt in theory. Each idea brought another question. If he exposed Evan, the company would suffer. Jobs would be lost. People who trusted Daniel would pay the price. Justice and damage felt dangerously close. Daniel argued with himself in the quiet hours. Evan deserved consequences. That much felt true. But how far was too far? Where did justice end and obsession begin? The questions circled his mind like birds that refused to land. Evan, meanwhile, slept well. That was clear from his public appearances. He spoke with ease, laughed freely, acted like a man unburdened. Daniel wondered if Evan ever thought about him at all, or if winning had erased guilt completely. One evening, Daniel sat in his car outside the old office building, watching lights flicker on floor by floor. He remembered sitting inside, full of plans, believing the future was shared. Now he felt like a stranger looking in. Revenge took clearer shape then, not destruction, exposure. Daniel realized he did not need to lie or exaggerate. The truth, alone, placed carefully, could change everything. Evan's strength was control of the story. If that control broke, so would the illusion. Still, doubt followed every step. Daniel noticed how revenge began to shape his days. Meals skipped, calls ignored. Life narrowing around one goal. He asked himself a hard question. If he won, what would remain of him? He visited his sister one afternoon, hoping distance would calm him. She listened quietly as he spoke, her face unreadable. When he finished, she asked only one thing. If you get what you want, will it give you peace or just a pause? The question stayed with him long after he left. Days later, the investor reached out, a powerful one. Nervous about Evan's leadership, curious about Daniel's silence. The opportunity arrived without effort, like fate opening a door. Daniel felt his pulse quicken as he read the message. This was the moment everything could shift. He drafted responses and deleted them. Each version carried a different future. One would burn everything down. Another would do nothing at all. He stared at the screen until the words blurred. Daniel realized how close he was to crossing a line. Revenge had stopped being an idea. It was becoming an identity. That scared him more than Evan ever had. That night, Daniel dreamed of the company collapsing, not loudly, but quietly. Desks empty, lights off. Evan stood alone in the building, confused, searching for someone to blame. Daniel woke up sweating, unsure if the dream was warning or wish. The next morning, Daniel went for a long walk. No phone, no plans, just movement. He thought about the early days again, about why he built the company at all. It wasn't for power, it was for meaning. Somewhere along the way that had been lost. By the time he returned home, Daniel understood the real conflict was not with Evan, it was within himself. Revenge promised balance, but it demanded a price. And the cost was becoming clear. When Daniel finally picked up his phone again, the investor's message was still there, waiting. So was the choice. Daniel stood by the window as the city moved below him, phone heavy in his hand. The investor's message remained open, a single thread that could pull everything apart. One call, one honest warning. The chain reaction would begin immediately. Evan's confidence would crack. The board would panic. The company would shake. Daniel knew exactly how it would unfold because he had once planned growth with the same precision. His heart beat fast, but his hands were steady. That surprised him. He expected fear. Instead, he felt calm, like the moment before a storm breaks. He sat down and closed his eyes. Evan's face came to mind. Not the public version, but the man. From years ago, the one who had slept on office floors and talked about loyalty like it was sacred. Daniel wondered when ambition had replaced friendship. Or if ambition had always been there, waiting. Daniel opened his eyes and began typing a reply to the investor. The words were clean and factual. No anger, no accusation. Just truth. He stopped before sending it. He read it again, slower this time, and imagined the aftermath. Headlines, meetings, staff caught in the middle. Fear spreading through halls that once felt like home. The satisfaction he expected did not appear. Instead, a quiet sadness rose. Not for Evan, but for himself. For how much of his life had narrowed to this one moment. Daniel deleted the message. He leaned back and exhaled, feeling something loosen in his chest. The decision surprised even him, but it felt right in a way revenge never had. Still, he wasn't finished. Walking away without speaking his truth felt like another loss. He opened a new message, this time addressed to the board. Daniel wrote carefully. He explained how the company had been built, what values had guided him, and how trust had shaped every decision. He did not attack Evan. He described actions, not intentions. He made it clear he had not stepped away by choice, and he ended with a simple statement. He was leaving with his integrity intact. When he sent it, there was no rush of victory, only relief. Hours passed before Evan called. Daniel almost ignored it. Almost, but this was part of the ending, and he knew it. Evan's voice was tense, stripped of confidence. He said the board was unsettled. Questions had been raised. Doubt had entered rooms where certainty once ruled. Evan tried to sound controlled, but fear slipped through the cracks. "I thought you'd try to destroy me," Evan said quietly. Daniel said nothing at first. He listened. "That felt important. I could have." Daniel replied at last. "I still could." There was silence on the line. Evan breathed out slowly. "Why didn't you?" Evan asked. Daniel looked around his apartment at the boxes he hadn't unpacked yet, at the future. That suddenly felt open again, 'cause I didn't want to become someone I wouldn't recognize. Evan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was softer. "I told myself it was business, that you'd understand." Daniel felt a flash of anger, but it faded quickly. "You told yourself what you needed to sleep at night." Another pause. Then Evan said something Daniel didn't expect. "I don't sleep much anymore." The call ended without resolution. No apology, no forgiveness, just truth laid bare. In the days that followed, the company changed. Not dramatically, not publicly, but the energy shifted. Evan still held his position, but his control weakened. The board watched more closely. Decisions slowed. The story Evan told no longer went unchallenged. Daniel watched from a distance. He did not interfere. He did not celebrate. The outcome felt fair, even if it wasn't perfect. With time, Daniel began to rebuild his life beyond the betrayal. He took long walks. He met people without agendas. He rediscovered parts of himself that had been buried under pressure and responsibility. The anger faded into something quieter, something manageable. One afternoon, Daniel received a message from a former employee, thanking him for the way he had led, for the standards he had set. It meant more than any victory over Evan ever could. Daniel understood then that revenge had offered him control, but letting go had given him freedom. Sometimes he still thought about what might have happened if he had made that call. The image came and went, without power. He felt no regret. The betrayal had changed him, but it had not defined him. And in the end, that was enough.